good. Well, good day for anyone at any point that you're listening to this audio. My name is Hilary. I am here because I just felt that I am going through life experiences that might connect with other people going through similar life experience. And so I'm hoping that me sharing my journey will help somebody else going through a similar journey. So, my story, this is me. Um, I just there's so much to tell, but I think that the part that I need to share is my most recent um, encounter, diagnosis, what I've been going through. Um, I, I was, I've been a registered nurse all my life, about 32 years. But for a portion of that time, between 2013 and 2020, I had decided to um, not work in that field for a period of time. I went back in 2020 and beginning enjoying working as a nurse again, but now it was years later, and I guess my body ability to snap back was not as fluid as I thought it would. So I started back in the field that I love nursing, and not only nursing but dialysis. Um, Applied and got a position for charge nurse, which is, you know, a position I feel like my body could handle. But soon after realized that the clinic needed a manager. And because of my previous experience being a manager, I decided to take on the task of managing my own clinic again. But soon, and I don't can't tell the period of time, but quickly my body was telling me that it it didn't feel the same. It wasn't the same. It was very difficult to maintain my health while doing this job. I have to tell you also that I am a pastor and a pastor's wife, and so I work at the church as well. And this is full time for me. I enjoy ministering there and sharing with people and giving back, and also, of course, a full time mother of a 16-year-old that is still at home, fully dependent on us. So, with that being said, going back to work was a challenge that I thought would fit into my lifestyle because I had done it before. But now, like I said, 30 something years later, of course, the the physical demands of the job began to take a toll. And so I began to start having different symptoms. I was not just not able to maintain physically the demands of the job, and would get sick and have to stay home for a period of time. But on top of that, I started to have pains, physical pains in my body. So through that process, I ended up having a car accident. They also did bone scans on me, trying to find out where all the pain was coming from, why I was listless and tired a lot, not having a lot of energy. I had previously been diagnosed with anemia and a low blood count, but right at this moment, that was not the case. My blood pressure was fine. Never been diagnosed with a comorbid diagnosis like diabetes or hypertension, so I was fairly healthy. And so doctors were not um, seeing anything that was irregular, that they needed investigating until about September, I think, of this year, when they realized that my um, my complaints of being tired and in pain had been going on for a period of time. He decided um, to check my blood levels for autoimmune markers, which came back positive. So they sent me on to a rheumatologist, and from there they tried to figure out what autoimmune disease I may or may not be diagnosed with. And to my great delight, they negated all the other autoimmune disease and came up with a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. But it was not just fibromyalgia, it was fibromyalgia with an emotional component. So she asked me if I had gone through some emotional distress or trauma recently. And I had gone through a lot of trauma, emotional recently. Um, and so the complete diagnosis was fibromyalgia with depression. So this was a very hard diagnosis to receive. I was not in complete denial, because the idea is that I was the one who sought out medical advice because of my symptoms of feeling the pain of not having the energy, of going through being sick with no diagnosis and not being sure what was the cause. So a diagnosis would make you feel validated for all the times you told the doctor you weren't feel well, and they weren't quite listening, and they didn't quite understand, and they didn't quite know what to do. But it also brought the dilemma of, now what? What does that mean for me physically in my life, or socially? How do I interact? Or um, medication wise, what do I take now? Because before this, there was no medication that I was taking on a consistent basis in my life. As I said, I had no comorbids, no diagnosis of any kind that would need for me to be taking any medication on an ongoing basis. And I was driving to work from the appointment, and realized I needed to stop for a moment to kind of regroup and wrap my head around the diagnosis. But not only that, but I reached out to my immediate family members to like help me to um, to figure out how do I do life going forward. And that's where I feel like a lot of us that get diagnosed with whatever diagnosis it is, that kind of shake your world, the normality of it, and how it it's going to be going forward. How is my life going to change? But also how I interact with the world. Now I felt like, okay, so this was caused by me not fully listening to my body when I was going through the pains ongoing. Also, not listening to the stressors that was causing all the emotional distress that led up to the my body having to kind of shake me up and say, guess what? We're going through something here right now, and it's something that you need to pay attention to. It's something that is going to change how you do life going forward. And did I mention that I was a pastor and a pastor's wife? So the idea of faith um, is another aspect that now you have to reconcile, because how do you now tell people of faith, or people that you have ministered to have faith, that you are now going through a diagnosis that may or may not have been occurring to somebody of faith? And so it was a lot to process. It was a lot to process. And so I I'm hoping again that sharing this information would help somebody who needs time to process a diagnosis. It might not be fibromyalgia with depression. like my particular diagnosis, which is where I was coming from and where I was thinking that I would be able to share with somebody with a similar diagnosis as I am. But it might not be. It might be another diagnosis. I remember sharing the information with one of my nurse colleagues that I went to nursing school with 30 years ago. And she was like, when you said it was a horrible disease, I was thinking the big C. And, everybody thinks cancer is the worst diagnosis that you could get. But there are so many diagnoses that people are going through. Mine is fibromyalgia. And when I say mine, I don't want to own it so much. I hold it loosely because one of the things with the diagnosis when I went back to my primary care doctor is that this is something that will never go away. That is a debilitating, discouraging prognosis you could ever get from any disease that you get diagnosed with, or from a doctor that's supposed to be treating you, because you feel like from a doctor, they should be encouraging you to get well, take your medication, do your treatment, change your lifestyle, change your eating habits, whatever it is. But the idea of a prognosis being debilitating, condemning, discouraging, disheartening, it puts another negative aspect on the diagnosis. So now you're diagnosed, and now you're being told not only you're diagnosed with something debilitating, but it's never going to get any better. And my immediate response is, no, don't tell me that. Let me have some hope. Give me some way of feeling like I can deal with this, because I can be encouraged in the fact that if I do certain things, if I change certain behaviors, if I am able to follow through and be compliant with my medication regimen and my treatment options, then I can look forward to a better way of life, a better way of doing life that will be good, that will be uplifting, that will be helpful, that will be different, that will come out of this negative situation and go into a more positive light, a more positive situation. But when the very healthcare provider that is supposed to be encouraging you to follow your medication regimen so that you can get to a better place is telling you that this is it, you're never going to get better. It's going to be debilitating, and it's going to be ongoing. This is life going forward. This is not encouraging. So, just to the healthcare field, because I am in the healthcare field, like I said, I've been a nurse for 30 years. It's not the way you want to encourage your patients to say, this is it. I think for her telling me this is it is to help me to wrap my head around the diagnosis and to not get my hopes up too much that anything is going to change. But hope is what keeps people going. So taking away hope, taking away progress does not help when you're talking to somebody going through something that's life going, that's ongoing, that's disruptive to their life, that is not pleasant, that is not good. So that's part of what I want to encourage my healthcare field providers to know. Even when somebody gives a diagnosis of cancer to a patient, the first thing the patient asks is, okay, so what are we going to do about this? And the best response from a healthcare provider is always, okay, this is the plan. It's not always a perfect plan. It's not always a plan that says it's curative, that is going to go away, but it's definitely a plan that will help the patient wrap their head around the diagnosis and have something to work on to say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to encourage myself that if I live right, if I work right, if I eat right, if I sleep right, if I exercise, whatever it is that you give me to do, I am going to do it, encouraged by the fact that it's going to get better if I do that. So, a prognosis of it's never going to get any better is not the way to go. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is one of my family member that I eventually shared the diagnosis with. Um, the response was curious to say the least, and again, is one of the reason for me choosing to do this podcast. Because she came up to me while I was sitting at the table at home and said to me, um, do you feel depressed? And my response, I'm telling you, I'm not sure what I said to her, but internally I felt this is crazy. Why are you asking me, do I feel depressed? And so my response to myself is, what does depression look like? For a lot of people, depression may look like I can't get out of bed in the morning. You know, I can't interact. I'm sad, or my affect, my countenance, how I look is flat and not expressive. But I would think that in this era of 2022, with all the knowledge that is going around and education regarding mental health, a lot of people realize that is just one aspect and a small aspect of that diagnosis. That everybody who's diagnosed with depression does not classically have those particular symptoms. There's a lot of functioning people that are diagnosed with different diseases, whether it is major depression, or it is bipolar affective, or it is just an anxiety disorder that they manage, and they have to maintain their life or their lifestyle, knowing that they have a maybe a panic disorder where they get panic attacks, or they have anxiety, or they're bipolar affective. That means that sometimes they're up and sometimes they're manic, and they're able to accomplish. A lot of people who are able to accomplish and write books and do their bipolar, and they don't present as somebody who is not able to carry on life, and not able to work in the work environment, and not able even to interact on a social level with friends and family. And so I'm hoping that this will continue the education of people who are not sure what depression looks like. Now, again, as a woman of faith, it pains me to accept a diagnosis of depression, because as a person of faith, a lot of times you're told that if you have a diagnosis of depression, it's because you don't have faith to believe God that He can bring you through whatever situation that you're going through. It's because you're not connected with God enough and understand how He is able to take care of you and manage whatever you're going through. And so, if you just have enough faith to believe God and to understand that He's a good God, and that He can take care of you, and He can take care of whatever is coming your way, that you don't have to internally think about what is happening to the point of distress, which would lead to a point of depression, which is part of what depression is. Of course, I don't completely understand this. I am not saying that I am an expert in this field. First of all, I am a nurse. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I don't study psychiatry. I don't study the field of mental health. I am not a learned person in this area. I worked in mental health for a short period of time. and more so in developmental disability. And even during that period of time, I did not go into a period of time where I went into classroom and studied regarding depression or anxiety or bipolar affective disorder or any kind of psychosis. So that is not where I'm coming from. I am not in that field, and so I am not trying to talk from that level. I am just from my own knowledge of the healthcare, what that I had to train in the 4 or 5 years that I did to take my Bachelor of Science in nursing. You have some aspects that you are trained in. And so, with that knowledge and understanding, and then with my own experience, this is where I'm coming from my life experience. But not only my life experience, I do have some knowledge and education regarding the mental field from the limited area that I had to study it for my nursing degree. So I just want to clarify that. But coming back again to trying to understand, how does a person of faith end up with a diagnosis of depression, really shook me as well. And then, as a family member coming to me and saying to me, do I feel depressed? Of course, that family member also being a person of faith. I'm not sure where she was coming from with the question. If it is, should you be confessing depression as a person of faith? Should you accept that diagnosis? Do you really feel like that diagnosis is genuine, is real, fits you? Should you think that that is the diagnosis that you should be diagnosed with? I mean, there is so many things that came with that question that I would probably have to ask her, where is she coming from? But on some level, I'm not even sure she knows if I asked her where she's coming from with that question. And maybe it's just out of curiosity and just bewilderment herself, and maybe being afraid that that diagnosis might be something that might shake her world, because I might be somebody that she's looked up to as a person of faith, and now being diagnosed with such a diagnosis might shake her level of faith and what she believes. Whatever it is, here we are. This is me. Here I am. I am Hilary Lorraine Palmer-Findley, 54 years old, a registered nurse of 32 years, diagnosed with fibromyalgia with depression. And I want everyone to know that I have faith. I am a woman of faith. I believe God. I am praying for myself that this will not be an ongoing life extended disease. I am processing even as I am talking about this. And so this journey for me has just begun. I just received the diagnosis between October and November. I cannot remember what, I think it was November, maybe more November to December. So I just received the diagnosis because this is December 28th of 2022 that I'm sharing this podcast. And so this is a new journey for me, but I believe that it was important for me not to have gone through it and then come out on the other end before sharing this information. First of all, I would probably forget some of the things that I went through, and I wanted it to be organic. But also, I think it would be helpful if I'm still going through it with you, my audience. If you are still going through, then you would identify while I'm going through that you are also going through. Or if you have already been through and you're on the other side of a debilitating diagnosis, you could be encouraged that you went through this and you can say, I know she'll be able to make it. Maybe you'll be able to say, I know what she's going through right now because I've been through that, but I'm on the other side of it. So wherever you are, and if you've never had a debilitating diagnosis, if you've never had anybody tell you that you are medically or going through something in your body, then I pray that you are able to maybe be empathetic towards somebody, maybe in your family or in your friend circle that may have been going through something. Because unfortunately, during this era, this time period that we're going through, there is so many people that are going through a prognosis, a diagnosis that is mental health debilitating or something. But like I said, if it's not even mental health, if it's something like cancer or whatever it is, just know that there is a way out, and I am on an active journey to seek God's face. One, for how do I process this, and two, how do I process this in a way that is positive, that can help somebody going through? Because I believe that everything that I go through in my life is a part of God's plan for me. I don't believe that He particularly decided that I was going through this, but the word of God to me is that all things work together for my good. So when I'm going through anything, I know God is able to work it together for my good. And I always say for my good and for His glory, because in the end, I desire my life to glorify God. And so I thank you for listening to me. I thank you for continuing to listen to my story as I continue to unfold my journey. My journey has gone through trying to figure out the different chemotherapy, drug therapy to go through, because as I said before, I don't take medication, so that's a struggle for me. She started me on Cymbalta, which is an antidepressant that gave me a lot of side effects, and I was not able to maintain Cymbalta. As a matter of fact, before the Cymbalta, they had thought I had an autoimmune disease, so they started me on prednisone, which everybody knows is a very strong steroid. But I am trying to be compliant with the medication regimen. But a friend of mine who is also in the field of psychology asked me if they offered therapy, and I said no. Nobody ever said to go and sit with a therapist to discuss if therapy could be a part of my treatment options. And so that's one of the options I'm definitely exploring. So again, as a person of faith, also from the Caribbean, because I do come from the West Indies. I was born and raised in Jamaica, in the West Indies. I came here to the United States on my 20th birthday. And so I grew up in a culture and a religious setting that don't necessarily encourage going to a therapist or psychiatrist to sit down and discuss feelings and what you're going through and therapy. But I have become a Christian counselor in my own right. Been counseling people for years, and so I do know there's an aspect of therapy that is definitely helpful. I've seen people and marriages especially come through and come around from a detrimental situation where they were abusive or on the brink of divorce and came around to a loving, healthy relationship. So I do believe that there's an aspect of therapy that works. And so again, as I journey through, I hope to continue to be transparent and to reveal everything that I'm going through, what worked for me, what is working and what is not working. And definitely, I pray to come out of this situation victoriously and bring you with me into a victorious life after diagnosis. Thank you.